Just pull her up here.
You know, I put that red there.
All right, Mai Chao, if you want to unmute and take it away.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you. But before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Ho-Chunk people, past and present, are the owners of this land. And it is where I have conducted my research and did a lot of my art, or I should say, did all of my art here. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you. This exhibit is just the tip of the iceberg as I continue to explore identity and sense of belonging in terms of like a Hmong person, in terms of a Hmong American woman, in terms of a student, but I graduated recently, so I'm really happy about that. And so this exhibit, like I said, is the tip of an iceberg in terms of exploring identity. And so how it came about was my doctoral research is about redefining what does it mean to be a Hmong American woman, what influenced me to become who I am today. And so that's the guiding question. And I also had some sub questions that helped me come up with the ideas, the images behind what you're seeing here. So these questions include like, who am I? Where do I, like, who am I? Who do I pretend to be? Where do I belong? What do I want to become? And so by answering these 4 questions, and also the guiding question of like, what influenced me to be this way, helped me come up with visual representations. And so, although this is a collection of art that is mainly about myself, it's also about the collective experience in terms of other Hmong American women. So as you can see in these drawings, the 2 outside pieces are images from my good friends, and they're the woman on my left without the birds. That it's like just showcasing the innocence of a young woman and who's just blossoming. And so I was inspired by nature and wanting to capture the essence of like a flower just about to bloom. And then on the far right, on my far right, where the birds are, he's looking out into the open. That's a visual representation of one of my really good friends who just started a successful business to support her community. And so looking into the distance and thinking about what their hopes and dreams are. So that's what the birds represented. And I really want to capture the essence of like what it's like to be a Hmong American woman. Not just my own experience, but the experiences of other people. And so I think through my personal storytelling about the individual, it brought in our collective experience. And so I also have 2 young boys or sons in my family, and I want to represent or show them the spirit of what it means to be a Hmong woman, the spirit of what it means to be a Hmong American woman. And so being a first generation college student, it's not easy. And I feel like I'm paving the way for the generations that come after me. And so it's my duty to make sure that I inspire them to find their identity as they navigate these very challenging and sometimes unknown paths. And so my research opened the door in terms of being able to write about the experience, but also to make art. So I feel like I'm an artist, and I'm also a scholar. So when I merged the 2, I could tell my stories in multiple ways. And so it's important for me to have this art show. Like I didn't have to include visual representation in my research, but I want to because that's part of my identity. And so I feel like it's a celebration of myself and also a celebration of the Hmong American women's spirit. And we are all connected in our experience. So as you can see, I've been talking about the Hmong American women identity, but my work goes beyond cultural boundaries and lines. And so when I'm telling my stories and my colleagues or peers or community members come and they look at my art, many of them can relate to the stories. I mean, like when you look at this visual image of a 3 by 3 feet painting, it's like a mother and a child, and she's carrying the universe on like the back of his shirt. And so Roots talks a lot about creating that groundwork in your children. Teach them what's important to you, to them, so that the roots continue to grow and they know who they are. And I love incorporating, if you look in the background, multimedia pieces. So those are more like older artifacts of like bandao, like flower cloth, that are either gifted to me by my friends like Kim Hammer and her friend Marianne, or I bought it from elders in the community, so I'm supporting them. But like I want to preserve this by incorporating old into modern, in terms of like inviting the past to be a part of the present. So they're existing in a completely new environment, but it's still very relatable to what it means to be a Hmong person. And so it's very important for me to like not just tell my story, but also incorporate pieces of my culture into my work. Yeah, so those are the gist of what inspires me and the importance of telling my story so that it goes beyond cultural lines. I think when we open the door to talk about who we are as people, I think we create bridges with different cultures and different people in our communities. And so one of my goals is to continue to do that and, you know, really challenge everybody to look inside themselves and think about, who am I? And how do I exist as a community member in relation to other people? How can we work together to create a stronger community where there is no fear about the unknown? Because my hopes and dreams, I have hopes and dreams just like everybody else. And so if I look this way, it's not because of this or that. It's like what I bring to the community is a gift too. And so when I'm sharing my art is just part of my gift of sharing my story with the community. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. That's just what I wanted to share tonight.
Speaking. Well, that was absolutely wonderful, Mai Chao.
Thank
That's
you.
some beautiful insight there. Yeah, I'll just kind of scroll through your paintings here, and if you ever want to talk about any of them, even if I passed one or whatever, a specific one you want to talk about, just let me
Sure.
know.
How about pause on this one? So on my right on your screen, it might be on a different side. There's the 4 elephants. So here's an example of what storytelling means. I felt like my culture, my understanding of Hmong culture is shattered. Okay, it doesn't mean my culture is shattered. It's not. It's my understanding. So to me, I feel like my story started from China. It moves to Laos, it moves to Thailand, and then it moves to America. And so it's like different pieces, and that's where you see the elephants. And then within the elephants, it represents. It has like the writing in it in that culture, and so that's just one example of like how I interpret it. Because like my parents are, when I was growing up, they're always like, you need to remember your language, you need to remember your culture, you need to remember your food. And to me, I was like, what does that even mean? It's important. I know that's what we do every day at home, but then to internalize it and to really make sense of it, that's the work that I did with my dissertation work. And like, what does it mean to be a Hmong person through food, through the clothing, through the language that we speak? So through the shatteredness, I was able to put the pieces together to create my own identity as a Hmong American woman. So growing up, I'm a Hmong woman, but then as I transitioned through the different stages of schooling, I became something else, but I still have the Hmong in me. So I think that's at the heart of my research is like, how did I arrive here? What environments helped me become the way I am? And at the same time, like, how did I create a place where I belong? Do I belong in Hmong culture? Do I belong in a Hmong American culture? Or like, how does that work? And so when you read my work, it talks a lot about the navigation and then the redefining of who I am. And so I think my work is not just about myself as a Hmong American woman. It goes beyond cultural, it goes beyond gender roles. And so I think that's really cool.
Awesome. We had someone ask for you to tell us about this painting.
Sure.
Mm.
So this painting was inspired by like Native Americans. I feel like we have a lot of connections to their culture. And so the bear represents my animal spirit. And so when we first came to America, the first gift that I got from a sponsor was a black bear. I still have that bear today. It sleeps with me every night. And so it's like 30 something years. And this creature was the gift that created safety. And so I felt like I really resonated with the black bear spirit. And so I wanted to capture a time that my children are still young. And so I created this visual representation of, if you can see, look at the female face. One side has glasses and the other doesn't. So one represents my traditional Hmong face and the other is more of my Hmong American face. And so, so that was intentional. I do little things that, like everything is intentional. It's not like random. And so that tells about the identity piece, but also her necklace was made up of like chrysalis and the kind of like the life cycle of a butterfly. We live in Wisconsin. Monarchs are just as gorgeous as any other butterflies. And so I really connected with that creature. And so my point of talking about my kids and these very intentional pieces is I wanted to capture the innocence of them in their own storytelling. And so when they were creating this piece, I think one's they were 9 years old and 5 years old. So like they were into like Captain Underpants and like Diary of the Wimpy Kid and like all of these. So they have their own adventures going on in the background. And I feel like this piece, even though there's a lot of moving parts, it really captures a time in my life where, the kids are part of my identity. And so river rocks are the blue things here that we love to go camping and collect rocks so that the kids can paint on them or, just something that will bring memories back. And that's what those were.
Wonderful. Speaking of the rocks, this one painting that is behind me, we had the Boys and Girls Club, which is a youth exhibit in our balcony gallery right now. The girls part of the club, there was a couple of them that came in yesterday evening, and a couple of them asked about the rock on this painting. I don't know if you can really tell from this image, but I'll let you kind of explain. They were just kind of curious about it and what the purpose is behind it.
Absolutely. So this woman represents a Sha woman, like we call it shaman, but like I feel strongly about using like patriarchal terms. So I change it to a Sha woman who is like a spiritual healer. So she's embracing the world. That's what the peony flower represents. And so I'll get to the rock in a few seconds. I think it makes sense if I explain it like this. So the Sha woman is holding the world in her arms. And if you look towards the middle or the bottom center, you'll see this umbilical cord connected to her. So it's like Mother Nature, but a spiritual healer. And so her hair is like the stars that captures like just the unknown mystical world. And then the rock is like the burden that one generation, there's like 3 generations here, because that's all I know. I know my mother and her mother a little, and then myself. And so just carrying that, the rock represents the burden. So behind me are my ancestors who are helping me lift this rock up. And so if you look at the picture itself, there's a gap between the hair and the fabric. And so the rock also filled the void, but it really represented like I'm not alone in this. There's a collectiveness behind me. There's a story, lived experiences that keep lifting me towards whatever I want. And so, yeah, that's a great question, because it's such a small artifact in the big 4 feet by 4 feet painting. So I'm really glad they picked that out.
Yeah, they were very interested in it. Super,
Awesome.
I didn't know where that was going. That's super interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that's all the questions I have on my list.
We have a request in the comments
Hold on
to
a
show
second.
Barbara's gold
Oh,
picture.
I
again.
guess in the comments there was a request to show one of Barbara's paintings again, so we'll switch over really quick. The very last one. So this one was asked to be shown again. So I guess Barb, if you want to talk about it a little bit.
It's a pretty recent painting, and I am beginning to branch out and bring in a little more what is considered color.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Yep, it just passed it.
No, it should be at the end.
I think you did.
There it
See, I told you. Oh, there it is. So this is Anna, and it's in Banbury Place. It's in the Dancer Studio. And she just posed for me in the light. I always bring in students who are willing to actually pose. So it's not on the fly. It's definitely posing. I have like 300 or 400 photographs of different people posing for me. And what I really loved about this was, the way the light comes over her arm, the dark shadows, making shapes. And the sensitivity in the face on top, but the seriousness on the bottom face. Her many, like Mai Chao's work, the many aspects of the personality, and she has a very strong, amazing personality. And yeah, you know what? I think I talk a lot, but I think I'm better at painting my images than talking about them. I'm not sure what else I can say about it. I do like, and I noticed historically that I like figures coming out of that dark. And as I mentioned before, and if you look closely, you could see how the shadow coming across her back here changes in color. And so you could see her through the darkness of the shadow. And I got the message from Rosalie, and she thinks it's my best painting ever. So there you go. Yeah, it's a beautiful painting. I have to admit that Anna owns a lot of my paintings. She's kind of taken them on, but not this one. I still own this one. So, and it just is kind of richer in color, and perhaps, I'm not sure about sensitivity, but perhaps it is. You're muted.
Got it. I guess there's another question from Leah. That can Andy tell us about the relationship between history and storytelling in his paintings?
Well, we'll change places so that we can.
Switch to a couple of Andys. That was a good one. Oh, that one.
I certainly am surprised by the number of stories that I've found in history. History is as my sister who's listening would know, is a very difficult academic pursuit. You have to get everything right. And the storytelling, maybe that's one big difference. You can kind of get away with things and kind of go off on tangents and find some kind of mystical or philosophical meaning that wouldn't be in the actual academic pursuit of facts as you would in a history book. But I'm constantly surprised by, I love reading history books and finding all these amazing things that have happened in the world, civilizations that have completely disappeared. One of my favorite books is called The Silk Road. It's all about things like that, things that no longer exist. But we're very similar to what we have today. Well, that doesn't, I don't know if that does much. History, to me, is more of an academic. My father was a historian. My sister's a historian. I have a great deal of respect for it, and they're more interested in truth. I kind of use the imagination a lot. Does that do anything?
That answers my question. All right, we have one more. This one is back for Mai Chao. The question was, I just made it go away. Hold on. From Kim Hammer, which came first, the textiles or the painting/image?
Ooh, that's a great question, Kim. So I always sketch out my ideas first, and then once the sketch is there, it brews in my head late at night. And then so like there's a lot of negotiating between the painting images and the textile. So sometimes, like, I gave myself permission to be flexible because I don't want to like commit to putting like, it feels like it's natural to have the textile as borders in some. So for example, when you look at roots, the outside pieces are very natural because it's linear, like the path of the painting. Yep. And then in other pieces, if you go to the piece, go back one more.
This one?
Yes, that one. Like, it just, if I put borders on there, it just doesn't feel natural with the flow of the image and the visuals. And so the textile becomes part of her hat. Yes, like the stripe white and black is textile. So it's just the negotiating, and that's part of the fun too, is like, I didn't realize I was going to put fabric to use as her shirt. And so the dark gray piece back here is actually a sash that my mother used to carry us. It's a baby carrier, like the sash that held the baby carrier together. And so it's really old, and I didn't want to throw that out because it had such a significant meaning to us. So I turned it into a part of my art. But like, I guess it doesn't really, it matters in terms of when the textiles come into play, but usually it's negotiated in my mind all the time. So I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Mai Chao, we have one more question from Pat. Can you talk more about the challenge of doing identity work and what role and timing transforming that work into your art had on your personality? On you personally. Sorry, I can't read. If you read the chat too, the question is in there as well.
Sure. Pat, that's a great question. Thank you. The challenge of doing identity work is I'm always reflecting, always thinking how my words, my actions impact other people. I'm not perfect, but if I'm thinking about it, then the next time I know that I shouldn't behave this or that way to cause harm. And so part of doing identity work is you're very in tune with yourself about your actions and behaviors. And so as an artist, I have to do something for myself every day, whether it's writing a little poem, doing a little sketch, or reading a few chapters. I have to do one of these three every night just to stay sane, because I feel like my I have to create something. And so in that way, it really helped me to be a goal setter. Like, I have to accomplish this, or I need to accomplish that so I can do what I want. And so it's been great to have the ability to reflect, take that reflection, and whether it's through my personal or professional work, I feel like I'm able to create a lot of influence just by being in tune with my emotional intelligence piece. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, and we have one more question from Mary Lee. She's wondering if you could talk about this painting I have up on the screen, just a little about that one.
Sure. So this is in collaboration with multiple artists. So this is an actual altered book that my children, Ari and Ander, partake in it. So we all drew in this. We added artifacts and just different types of things that were relevant to us. So like nature is in here. If you look at the like page that's open, the black lines, he's into Ari's into like army guys, so that's his tunnel. And so I just call it Book of Memories because, you know, it's really important for my kids to see me make art and also for them to make art. I don't really coach them. I just said, here are some resources, here are some materials, go make something, tell your story. And so they're able to come up with some really cool things in here. In terms of the boat, it's a spiritual money. So it's a paper mache item. It's 3-dimensional. And, you know, I grew up in a very spiritual household, and I feel like I should bring some of that into my art as a tribute to what my parents have taught me. And so whenever I sign my art, it's at all like that includes, like, that's more than one artist. And so this piece is like, you can see the reflection in the water. We are a reflection of our experiences, was what I'm trying to get here. And the house is like, I remember living in a place like this at one time. So my childhood really influenced the art that I make. Yeah.
I guess there's one more. Yeah, I see one thing from Lauren. Hi, Lauren. She asks, is like, you seem very aware of your hierarchies. Did you face any pushback about your choices in materials? And are they a deliberate challenge to a fine art medium? And that was for you, Mai Chao.
Oh, I see. You seem very aware of hierarchies. Did you face any pushback about your choices materials? You know, I've been fortunate that in American society, I feel like I have a lot of freedom of expression. But if I were to invite like folks who are like unaccustomed to divergent thinking, I feel like they would probably challenge me openly, and I'm happy to entertain that opportunity. But I feel like as a minoritized artist, I feel like I have more freedom to exist in American culture. And so, yeah, I feel like if they push back, I'm not afraid to have the conversation and like tell them to create their own art if they don't like what I create, because that's my lived reality, you know? And so, yeah, that's the beauty of being in such a country that allows freedom of expression.
Good. And another part question from Lauren for Barbara. Is there any influence from Degas, dancers and bathers? The intimacy of your paintings is very striking, and the shifts in orientation and borders remind me of some of his work. She's curious if you have any.
Okay, so I can't say this is direct influence. What I love about Degas is his use of space. He turns up the floor so that it comes up to what's called the picture plane, or the front wall of the painting. And really that much more than the fact that they're dancers. You know, people assume that I was influenced by his dancers. His dancers and my dancers really do not relate. But actually, my favorite painting has to do with a nude in a bathtub. So, and it has to do with the space. So that if there is any influence from Degas, it has to do with the space of the room and the way he uses it.
Very nice. All right, that wraps up all the questions in our chat. So I think at this time, we're just going to open it up to you guys, I guess. But let me just kind of say a kind of an ending thing for each of the artists. So we are open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and Tuesdays from 9 to 7, and then Saturdays from noon to 4. And their exhibitions are up until July 17th. So if you want to stop in and come view their art in person, there's that. And we do remind you that this was all recorded and it will be put on our YouTube channel, social media, and websites. And a reminder, all the pieces are for sale as well. And I just want to thank you all for coming and thank the artists for having such amazing work and choosing the Pump House to
I do on
display
TV.
it at. But yeah.
And I just wanted to tell Mai Chao how much I enjoyed listening to her. And it was really fun
Yeah, I
having a show with her.
have a daughter named Ari, and my full name is Anders.
So,
Wow.
That's
together.
What a world. The feeling is mutual, Barbara and Anders. I enjoyed it, your stories too.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna go eat dinner, folks. Thank you.
All righty, well, thank you all again for coming, and we'll see you at our next reception. Hopefully, eventually it'll be in person again.
Thanks to my sister and my daughters.
And all our friends.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you. See you all.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye, Janice. Okay.